self-evident that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. We all know that phrase, but do we really understand how transformational that phrase was in the history of our country? And the answer is I don't think we do, and I don't think our leaders remind us enough. Great leaders remind us who we are, remind us of our mission, our duty to our country. And our duty to our country is to keep faith with that founding principle, that rights come to us from God, not any God, not some modern view of whatever God we want to worship. No, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the God in the Declaration of Independence. God is referenced 4 times in that declaration. Creator, providence, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, divine judge, nature and nature's God. Those are the 4 times it's mentioned. So our foundation is that rights come to each and every one of us. All men, no exceptions, all are created equal. You say, well, okay, that's great. I mean, that's a neat thing. We all accept that. Never been done in the history of the world. Never before was there a government founded on the fact that rights came to each person directly from God. We came from countries where rights came to the king, the divine right of kings. And the king, what were people called in England? They were called subjects, subjected to the will of the king. They served the sovereign. America was different. The government served the people. The government's job, as the Constitution laid out, was to protect those God-given rights. Really the one thing the Constitution was there to do. And our founders had this amazing concept that if they created a country where people were given rights and the government was there to protect those rights, that instead of having a king or an emperor rule the country from the top down, we can in fact have a country that can be great from the bottom up. Free people. Doing what? What do you read? What are the rights? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Did they put them in order for a reason? Yes. They're fundamental. You can't have freedom unless you're alive. Right? You can't really have happiness unless you're free to do what? Look up the dictionary definition of happiness at the time of our founders. You know what you'll find? This definition. Happiness. Doing the morally right thing. Why? Because our founders understood that true happiness, people understood, not our founders, it was understood in society that you could not be happy unless you were in conformity with God's will and God's laws. That living a disordered life may be pleasurable, but it will never lead you to happiness because you are doing things out of order with what God's will is for you. Imagine that. America built on a moral enterprise of people having rights from God and living their lives in conformity with His will. Do we really understand that? Do you have any politician today out there saying, America is a moral enterprise, and the reason we succeeded is because we had government limited and we had virtuous people who were built on a foundation of strong families who inculcated faith and morals and values, and as a result we built a great nation that changed the world. At the time of our founding, life expectancy in America was 35 to 40 years of age. Anybody know what it was 1,800 years before? At the time of Jesus Christ? 35 to 40 years of age. 1,800 years of human history, of the government ruling the people, doing what was best for them, taking care of them. And the human condition didn't change. We had an agrarian society in 1776, as they did at the time of Jesus Christ. And in 235 years, America changed the world. Life expectancy has doubled. We went from an agrarian society to an industrial society to a technology society, and who knows what we're involved in today. The poorest person in America today, what's the number one problem? of the poor in America today? Obesity. Obesity. That's the number one health risk. Obesity. You go back 50 years, the poorest person in America today from the standpoint of creature comforts, 90% of Americans have cell phones, cable television. Go back 50 years. Creature comforts, quality of life, health care. The richest people in America 50 years ago don't have what the poorest people of America have today. That is the dynamism that makes America great, and we have a president who goes around and apologizes for it. Is ashamed of what we do, sees us as a source for ill in the world, and believes that you can no longer handle freedom, and you need him and people like him in Washington to govern you, to tell you what student loan that you can get, to tell you what health care you can buy, to tell you what other business loan you can get if you can get one at all, to tell you what's fair as far as how much money they're going to take for you and how to redistribute that money around. Is a fundamentally different vision of America. Why is the Tea Party out there? Why am I out here with 7 children at home? Because my grandfather and father came to this country back in 1927, my grandfather, and then 1930, my dad. And they came for one reason. I used to talk to my grandfather about this. He had a great job. Lived in northern Italy, up near the Austrian border. Had a great job, beautiful little town. Have you ever been to Italy? I think it's the largest lake in Italy, Lake Garda. It's on the northern tip. It's this little resort town, and that's where my dad was born. That's where my grandfather lived. It was right near the foot of the Dolomite Mountains. It's a vacation villa right now. And he had this stable government job, all set for his life. And he left. And he came to the coal mines of western Pennsylvania. And he dug coal in a deep mine until he was 72 years old. I'll never forget, he was the first person I saw who had died. I went to his funeral. I'll never forget kneeling next to his casket and looking at his hands. He had enormous hands. And I look at my spindly little fingers, and I think of that man who for 30 years worked in the mines, digging coal, digging my freedom. And that's what he did. And that's why he came. Why? Because in 1927, Mussolini ruled Italy. And government was telling him and everybody how to run their lives. And he believed more in freedom than he did in the security of being taken care of. We are different here in America than the folks who are collapsing over in Europe, of the people who are pathetically claiming for more government benefits and don't cut anything, the people who are pathetically sitting out in Wall Street right now asking for the government to take care of them. That's the minority in America. It happens to be the majority in Europe. Why is it the minority here? Because we're different. Your ancestors came here because their DNA was different. They didn't want to be ruled. That's why they came here. They came here because they valued freedom more than anything else. And as a result, we changed the world. The question in this election is, are we going to keep faith with them? Are we going to be the generation, or are we going to be the generation that turned our back on 235 years of the most extraordinary experiment in human history?